Great. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for connecting today, and thank you to the BPGR to keep us all connected in this time of social distanciation. Um, it's great being able to give some updates about this seminar we conducted at the Radcliffe Institute in January. The seminar was entitled Researching Psychedelic-Assisted Therapies in Patients with Serious Illness, Defining a Path Forward. And so for those who don't know me, I'm a French-trained hematologist and palliative care physician, currently finishing a research fellowship in the Department of Psychosocial and Palliative Care at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And so I have completed the CPTR training 2 years ago. So I'm particularly excited by our guest speakers today. And my research focus focuses on integrating evidence from palliative care, spiritual care, and psychedelic research to develop novel interventions that address psychosocial and existential needs in patients with serious illness. And this is important because these patients and their families commonly experience psychological distress that remains unmet or insufficiently met with existing therapies. And psychedelic assisted therapies are gaining interest as a potential therapeutic modality as preliminary evidence suggests their unique impact on certain psychological, spiritual, and existential outcomes in serious illness. So our work over the past 2 years relied on the assumption that this excitement around about potential therapies may be best channeled through kind of a clear framework of needs and concerted research efforts. So our team recently published in the Journal of Palliative Medicine findings from a qualitative study that explored the potential roles and research priorities for psychedelic-assisted therapies in patients with serious illness. And so in this study, we interviewed experts with relevant and complementary expertise, such as oncology, palliative care, psychosocial oncology, spiritual care, and psychedelic research. And we analyzed their perspectives. And so a logical next step for this research was to convene an interdisciplinary panel of experts that we engage in defining priorities and an agenda for future research on psychedelic-assisted therapies in patients with serious illness. And this was made possible thanks to the amazing support of the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Studies that sponsored and hosted the seminar, and also a very nice synergy with the BPGR and the fantastic fungi team. And so we've been fortunate enough to assemble this amazing group of people for 2 days. And that was a few weeks before all travels were banned. So we feel really grateful for that this was possible to happen. And so during these 2 days, we engaged participants in an iterative series of reflective exercises that we designed to elicit biases and perspectives on scientific opportunities and priorities for psychedelic research in serious illness. So we collected data through pre-conference interviews, audio recordings, flip charts, and sticky notes all along the small groups exercises and large group discussions, and a lot of note takings as well. And we transcribed all this data and conducted content and thematic analysis that we further discussed in several multidisciplinary discussions. Our core team was composed by 2 palliative care physicians and qualitative researchers, Justin Sanders and myself, with the assistance of a French historian and philosopher specialized in existential philosophy, Benjamin Guérin, and Claudia Schwartz, that many of you know, and who is a social scientist studying the psychedelic renaissance in the US. So as our analysis is still ongoing, and for the sake of time, I'm really presenting here very high-level priorities that emerge from these conversations. And a first set of priorities related really to the efforts in this research field that have the potential to shift the landscape and bring psychedelic-assisted therapies into mainstream research in serious illness care. And this involves conducting multi-center randomized controlled trials in patients whose psychosocial and palliative care needs have been addressed by multidisciplinary teams. This according to standards of care. And so ironically, most of the preliminary data that now drives the large European and American trials in depression really comes from the cancer population and population of patients with seriously ill patients. But there is still a need that was highlighted by these participants to really conduct specific large RCTs in this patient population. And this, of course, in close relation to regulation and funding mechanisms that should support this effort and evolve accordingly to the findings. Then we identified another set of priorities that relates to the long-term effort that we need to build the science of psychedelic-assisted therapies in patients with serious illness and their families as well. So really, who may benefit from these interventions, when, at what times of the illness trajectory, and with what therapeutic protocols and according to what criteria, how are we going to assess that these interventions are beneficial for patients and their families. And finally, participants highlighted that none of these research efforts made sense without scaling up education and certification programs. And we're gonna hear Janice Phelps afterwards talking about that. And this, and really including in medical studies and all the fields that are involved in this research field. And we also need to ensure that research is inclusive of our multicultural communities and the highest needs probably being in the most underserved populations. So of course, this is highly connected and interrelated, highlighting further the need to integrate and coordinate efforts and findings as research is moving forward. So this is nearly it, and I will end by quoting some of the participants to highlight another themes that we observed throughout the seminar, and that is more epistemological or philosophical one. So these participants said, existential distress is a very medically bounded way of looking at spirituality. I'm not sure we should pathologize a spiritual crisis, even when it is precipitated by illness. And this is really speaking about all this effort to find indications and establish diagnoses that might be amenable to psychedelic research, psychedelic therapies. But are we really looking for diagnosis and indication, or is this something else? Another participants said, is this therapy so fundamentally different that it needs a different kind of assessment paradigm or a different paradigm to ask the right questions? And then third and last one said, how might research on psychedelics inform the understanding of the existential and spiritual experience of being human, including a seriously human? So this really speaks about how further research should keep those elements in mind. And maybe it's an opportunity to help the medical model we are in for centuries now to evolve, and to evolve from the perception that illness, suffering, and death are just problems to be solved. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have paper coming out, and we can, our hope is that this may help inspire research teams, clinical teams, and as well as funding and regulation agencies. That's it. And this is a nice quote from Taylor de Chardin.
Nice. Wonderful, Yvonne. Great. We'll
Thank you, Anne.
Look forward to hearing more and more as you evolve more and pull it more together. But this is fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful work. So the next person is Dan Grossman, who's going to report on the contemplative practices and psychedelics, an affinity group of people who've been meeting. Dan, are you on the call?
I am. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Dan.
Hi, everyone. So just a brief update. We met yesterday for the second time. We had Ann Dutton, who was presenting on a study she's involved in that's looking at acceptance and commitment therapy as a therapeutic frame for psilocybin-assisted therapy for depression. So she's involved with that. There's some papers that are published on that topic that we were using as a springboard for a bigger discussion that went everywhere from integration after intense psychedelic experiences to, bad trips, intention, and how that shapes psychedelic experiences. Really wide-ranging and interesting discussion. We also have a mission statement now, which is to hold a forum for exploring the intersection of Vedic and Buddhist-inspired contemplative practices and psychedelic research and therapy. So for anyone who is interested in that topic, you can email me. My email's in the email list for BPRG. And we're happy to have you on our chain and join the group. We'll be meeting usually around the time when BPRG meets.
Great.
That's all.
Thank you so much, Dan. That's wonderful. And Mackenzie Bullard to report on the Diversity Outreach and Inclusion Group.
Yep. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. Hold on, let me figure out where I put that. Got so many pages open. So we met on 04/27, I believe it was last week. It was great to reconnect with everybody. The energy was pretty high for the DOI group. And we went over a couple of things, those being we're creating a charter. You know, we have some social workers and we're really into creating community that looks a little bit different than what the current community looks like and who's a part of that, especially in the research side of things. And the group has really come to the understanding that if we want research to advance as the BPRG mission says, then we need to start including people that don't always look white or people that don't come from very elite groups or whatever that may be. We want to really decentralize what we kind of hold the idealism of psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapy to be today. We want more people to have access to this, as Yvonne alluded to, people who may be in communities that are incredibly underserved, and the ones that are suffering from the most amount of trauma are the ones that probably need this therapy the most, especially people who are at the end of their life. And so what we've done is we've come up with a charter process. We're creating a problem statement as a really wide perspective on why diversity and inclusion and people of color and ethnicity is really important, and the integration of research and psychedelic therapy. A mission statement. We're building a meeting process for consensus building, and developing an action plan and network process, so we understand where we're going to go out into the community and ask people to engage with us, to understand how we can really get boots on the ground and start bringing people into these meetings and spreading the word and the research and bringing it to their community and letting them do what they want with what's going on, and allow them to create feedback mechanisms that they see fit, so we don't have any kind of appropriation or anything going on. As a group, we've worked on we're also working on a proposed list of different kind of speakers to come in and talk about these issues that we see in psychedelic research today. Why are Black and brown people not a part of the PhD programs and a lot of the training going on? Why are we not educating therapists with a cultural sensitivity? And how can we make these things more inclusive? So that's what we really are focused on right now, and I'll yield the floor for any questions or anything, and then we got to move on. Thank you, Anne, for the space, and I appreciate everybody being here today.
Thank you for the good work you're doing, Mackenzie. It's wonderful to see the energy around all this.
I have a question. My name is Courtney Watson. I'm from Oakland, California, and I just finished the CPTR group or a program. But in terms of trying to get communities of color the access and to bring in providers to provide this into their own communities, is there going to be any funding opportunities for that to take place?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can explore that right now. Courtney, I think it's a really important question. And maybe you and you could connect with Mackenzie and have a conversation offline. I hate to cut you off, but we have a really.
That's okay. I'll private message him.
Yeah, thank you. Dick Simon to tell us about the Mass General Center for Psychedelic Studies, please. Again, thank you, Mackenzie. Sorry to have to cut it short.
Great. Well, I'll briefly. So basically, Mass General Hospital, which for those of you who might not be aware, is Harvard Medical School's primary teaching hospital, is launching a psychedelic research center under the leadership of Jerry Rosenbaum, who for the past 20 years has been running the MGH psychiatry department. He's being joined by some other sort of incredible names and leaders in their space who've developed who developed fMRI and who do incredible work around biological neurology. So yeah, the current situation, there's a trial which has been funded, and hopefully will begin as soon as one can begin having physical contact with patients. And that is around rumination and for people suffering from treatment-resistant depression utilizing psilocybin. So what's really interesting, though, is that it's going to be combined with a bunch of imaging, sophisticated imaging, as well as organoids, where sort of small brains or reconstructed brains just really get to see what is, to really have a better sense as to mechanism of action in conjunction with therapeutic outcomes. So in this time, fundraising has been, philanthropic fundraising is far more challenging than it had been a couple of months ago, but we're proceeding on a number of fronts, and it's exciting, and there are a lot of good things going on. We're also looking at potential partnerships, which are interesting and exciting. So that's the bulk of going well. Wish it was going a little bit faster, but it's definitely moving. And then there are a number of other studies that are teed up. Thanks.
Thank you, Dick. I forgot to introduce Dick as one of my co-founders of the BPRG. I so appreciate all of your support, Dick, and all the great work you're doing in this field. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then Mark Green, are you on? And if you're not on, then Katie Infantine, if you can just give us, one of you, a quick update on the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy group that's meeting here in the Boston area. I didn't see Mark on the list, so maybe Katie, I know this is last minute, but you could hop in.
Hey, everybody. So we met as a group of ketamine clinicians on Wednesday, and we were fortunate enough to get together as a group in that way. So some of the things that we had discussed were, what does ketamine look like within quarantine? And many folks have halted their practice, unfortunately, just with the safety and ethics in mind about doing psychedelic psychotherapy over Zoom. Though some folks have continued to work with their clients who were well known to them and had previous experience using ketamine in therapy. So a few of the folks have continued to work and been able to do that safely, which is great. And folks are still sort of at the beginning of their practices and haven't been able to take on new clients, as it's just not, it doesn't feel comfortable to meet new clients and then go ahead with therapy. There was an interesting question posed, whether there was a place for ketamine-assisted therapy within the process of death and dying from COVID. So that was a really interesting question. And we're gonna continue to be discussing that. Other things I may be forgetting to mention, I can update later in the email. But for now, some of us continue and some of us are halted. So thanks.
I'm glad you're still meeting. That's great. That'll
Can I
keep.
ask a question?
And thank you.
Can I ask a question, Ann?
Sure, KD.
Yeah. Katie, did you guys develop a decision-making protocol or tree among the therapists for how to proceed as a group, or were individuals making decisions on their own? you know, I know that MAPS came out with a statement on their site about, you know, how they were approaching it, but this is such a timely thing and it's relevant to all of us. And I'm curious about people's, you know, how they've tried to come up with solutions that.
Sure. For now, we're really functioning independently as we are all part of different practices, and some folks are working together within their practices. But for now, we don't have a cohesive kind of tree of protocol. We're really still working on that and trying to develop it as we meet. So for now, it's pretty individually based.
Thank you. And again, if you two want to connect offline, I think there's a lot of wisdom here to be shared. So thank you, Katie, so much, especially last minute. Well done. And then Mark Bates, who's joining us from the DC area, who spoke to us the last time about research that he and his partner, Bob Kaufman, are getting going. And he was going to give us an update about that research. Are you on, Mark? There you are.
Thank you, Anne. And hello, everybody. Gosh, I'm so struck by the richness and synergy of all the different activities. Thank you, Anne and Sherry, the rest of your BPRG community for setting up this virtual event so people like me from DC can participate. For background, for those I don't know, I'm a retired military psychologist and I went through the CIIS program last year. The problem we're trying to address is a significant number of military veterans are experiencing continued mental health needs. Some numbers are 17 suicides per day. And studies show that up to 60% of veterans do not respond to the leading forms of treatment for PTSD, despite significant efforts by many different departments to support veterans. So the critical information that came to light last year was that we learned that many veterans are seeking healing through psychedelics and sharing significant benefits and not reporting harms, significant harms. So our goal is to find out more about veterans' experiences with using psychedelics for healing by conducting an anonymous survey to understand both what their benefits that they're experiencing, but also the harms, and what practices they're using. Our goal is to collect 1,000 surveys. And we're hoping that this information can inform harm reduction efforts with veterans, so give them some recommendations on how to be safe and have optimal healing experiences, but also to inform policymakers on the extent of use by veterans and the overall benefits and harms being experienced, and to explore the impact on specific mental health and substance abuse conditions that are priorities for veterans and the rest of the nation, to be honest, and to inform future treatment models. We suspect that veterans may prefer group treatment, for example, and also treatments that respect their cultural values. We have a research team of 6 dedicated researchers with diverse talents, amazing synergy. I just want to name them, who are volunteering large amounts of their time to get this study done. There's Alan Davis, who's a psychologist at Ohio State and Johns Hopkins University. Katinka Hoyer, who's a medical anthropologist at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Bob Kaufman, who's a retired military psychiatrist and preventative medicine physician. He's in the CIS training right now. That's why he can't join us. Eric Lund, who's an expert in survey research, and Morgan Luttrell, who's a cognitive scientist and an ex-Navy operator. We also, as part of this study, have a veteran advisory team. This is based on community participation research models. And so we have 10 different service members, retired service members, who are advising the study on each step along the way. Our motto is not about us without us. For instance, on our survey, they gave us 20 different areas of feedback that led to significant improvements in the survey. For progress updates, we've recently been approved for IRB approval through CIIS. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Janice Phelps, who is our mentor and supporter at CIIS. Currently, we're trying to secure funding. Our priority would be to compensate veterans who participated in the survey, which is rather long, for $25 a person. We think we can do it without, but we keep trying on that funding issue. We're also coordinating an NIH certificate of confidentiality to protect identifiable research information from disclosure and further protect veterans from immunity from any potential legal processes. We don't see this as a real risk, but we're doing everything we can to just make sure that there would be no risk to our participants. And we're currently uploading the survey into Qualtrics and getting ready to pilot the survey. I'd be glad to answer any questions offline, but thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this update. And we look forward to just hearing more during this presentation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. And for those of us who weren't with us at our last meeting in March 8th, you can go on our website or on our YouTube and what Mark did a little presentation, but he was a little overshadowed by the two ex-Navy SEALs who talked about their personal experiences when they went down to Mexico and how it has been totally transformative for them. I really recommend people seeing that if you weren't able to be there in person. So great that you're moving ahead, Mark. Thank you so much. It's important.
Thanks for the support, Ann.
Sure. So on our schedule now, just one other thing. We also have a affinity group that's not reporting, but because it doesn't really meet that much, that is helping other cities get PRGs going. So if any of you are interested in that, you can be in touch with me and or Sherry. And we're really trying to figure out what we can do to help other communities get things like this going. I think particularly now, we're all looking for ways to stay connected. So we recommend it.